And joining us live this morning to further discuss this anxiety and stress this election season is board certified Beverly Hills psychiatrist and best-selling author, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So a lot to dissect. And I think from that report, the one thing that stood out to me and maybe to the viewers is stressing won't change the outcome of the election. Could you put this into perspective for us, please?
Yes, that's a good way of thinking about it. I call it election stress disorder. And what that is a constellation of physical and psychological symptoms. So psychological, of course, anxiety, depression, frustration, fear, anger, irritability, all of these kinds of things. And physically, when stress attacks the part of your body that is the weakest. So for example, if your cardiac system is the weakest, you have high blood pressure or whatever, that's what's going to be attacked most with stress. Ulcers, all those kinds of things are where the stress goes.
Another thing that stood out during that report is how the stress for parents is even trickling down to the children. What might seem like a normal dinner time conversation is now tense. How do you relay this information to those young folks that can't even vote this election season?
Yes, that was very good advice, that kids are paying attention to this. They don't really understand all of it depending upon their age and all of that, but they are listening. They're particularly listening to parents who are getting into arguments, with other relatives or strangers that they meet, things like that. And you need to model not getting into arguments. This election season has been the worst, the most stressful, because we have been on a roller coaster. So many things were changing. We thought that it was going to be a race between Biden and Trump. Then Kamala came in. Then Trump was having 2 assassination attempts. I mean, kids take that in as well. And so we have been going, our stomachs have been going up and down, and we have been going in circles. So that's why, it's not just the usual, there has been certainly election stress disorder before, but it's really worse this year because of all of these things that we've been going through. And plus the fact that the world is in a much more dangerous place. It does seem like, the division, first of all, there have been studies that show 71% of people are stressed because of the election, and 77% of people are stressed because of they're worried about the future of our nation. And what a statistic that I have found particularly interesting, because it can't be manipulated, is 38% of people in the past 6 months have been having more nightmares. And these nightmares have been about death and teeth falling out. Predominantly, those are the most typical nightmares. Now, death, of course, is obvious. Teeth falling out, psychoanalytically, is also death. So basically, we're all, worried that that when it comes to the end of the election, we're going to die.
My goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that alarming information this morning, Dr. Lieberman. We appreciate you putting it that way. So as we look at the election, we know the day, November 5th, we know that night, the following morning, probably the election won't be over. There's also concerns and worry this morning as relates to election security, election interference, what will happen leading up to the new year as it relates to, changing out of the command of the Oval Office. So many worries this morning.
Right. That, people do need to be prepared for that, for post-election unrest of all different kinds, like you were mentioning. And, we're probably not going to know on election night. People stay up. A lot of people stay up and wait. They think they're going to know. And regardless of who seems to be winning, that at the end of the night, midnight, there's going to be a lot more. This is going to be like the 2000 hanging chads, but on steroids. I'm sure you remember the George Bush versus Gore in Florida. The election was very close, and so they were having to count chads, having to count, it was paper ballots and some of the ballots had what they called hanging chads, and that was where the person didn't push the circle all the way through. So, and that took quite a while to decide. So it could well be like that, but on steroids, because this election to begin with has been so much more contentious.
Great advice this morning, Dr. Lieberman. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
Yes, yes. I want to tell people what to do and what not to do. What not to do is to get into your car and drive when you're feeling upset. Not to abuse drugs or alcohol while you're going through all of that. You know, you think, oh, I'm just going to do this temporarily, but then the election is over and a month goes by and you're still using alcohol or drugs to cope. What you should be doing is, doing things like meditation, sports, hobbies, things to get your mind off of this. The antidote to feeling helpless with all of this is activism. So, it's not too late. Still have time to go out there to volunteer to help your party. Then you can, whatever happens with the election, at least you can feel that you did your best to contribute to whatever it is that you wanted. Also, you should have a balanced diet. One of the things that you shouldn't do is to keep looking. Some people are so obsessed. They are at their computer or at their television, their radio, or all of the above, and they're checking every minute. Well, what do the polls say now? What do these polls say? Well, you can look at the same newspaper online, for example, and you'll have 10 different polls or 5 different polls, and they say all different things. And that's because of who the people are polling and when they're polling them. So you can drive yourself crazy if you keep being obsessed with the polls. So just take it easy. Try to surround yourself with friends or family, people who can either literally are surrounding yourself in your living room or being in contact by phone or Zoom with people to ride this through.
Great advice. So remain calm. Do not be obsessed with the polls. Either way, voting is all you can do. Activism is another way to make change. If you aren't happy with the results following election day, make smart decisions because you don't want to end up behind bars. All great advice this Sunday morning. Dr. Carol Lieberman, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.